lie to you. I didn't tell you the part I didn't want to be true.
I think Barry is a pretty weird show because this show aesthetically and tonally feels almost unrecognizable from season one. Rather than a lighthearted show about show business that just happened to feature a hitman, this show, Barry, is now a hitman grappling with his humanity, and maybe there's an occasional comedic element here or there. I think been a pretty steady descent into darkness.
Really, I'm sorry, buddy.
I get it. It's okay.
Yeah.
There was the potential for this show to be like a straight up Hollywood satire. It has many elements of that. For instance, season 3, like one of my favorite subplots in season 3 is Sally making the show. It's an amazing show, hugely successful, amazing premiere, and then it's canceled by the algorithm.
The algorithm felt it wasn't hitting the right taste clusters.
Taste clusters.
Like that is a cutting commentary on the state of Hollywood right now. But I don't feel like that is the main event in Barry. Like I don't feel like that. Like the show is primarily a Hollywood satire. It has those elements in it, but it is, I think, a character study of this character of Barry, and I think that's ultimately what it has become.
I never should have taken that acting class. If I hadn't have tried to understand myself, we wouldn't be here.
I was reading interviews about this being the last season and how Bill Hader and the creative team were talking to the head of comedy at HBO and telling them that this is probably the last season. I was thinking to myself, wow, yeah, I guess Barry is theoretically a comedy. Again, these days, I think it has some funny elements, like the Dave and Buster scene in these 2 episodes were like really very amusing. And the idea of like running a gang meeting at Dave and Buster's, that's like a very funny concept. But I don't think that's what, like, Barry feels now to me at the very most a dark comedy, but mostly a psychological drama that has comedic elements. What do you think about the tone of this show and how it's changed over time, Siddhant?
I think it feels like a very natural extension of everything we've seen. You compare like an early season 1 episode where it's mostly like, there's dark things happening, but the tone is very wry. And now it's like, oh no, get way into their heads and watch their torment unfold.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we've seen a natural progression in this direction. And I don't know like how many shows have done something like that, where they have so gradually shifted in style in a way that makes perfect sense. Like the only other recent show I can think of with such wild swings between seasons is Search Party, but that was hardly um, a show that gradually or organically changed. It was one where each season was just a different genre.
Yeah, I would say the Vince Gilligan universe, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, those are both shows I would say had much more lighthearted early seasons that then by the end became incredibly serious and dark and upsetting. But even in their heyday, I would never have classified Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul as comedies. Like I would never in their early, but this. I remember the earlier seasons, like this is very, very funny, and it's like, oh, ha 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 ha, and he just happens to kill people. Now the show is saying, hey, we're going to make you deal with the consequences of that, right? Like we all had a great time in seasons 1 and 2, but now we're going to see what the human cost of all that laughter was, basically, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like overall it works for you just because of the big swings that it's taking. Is that accurate to say, Siddhant?
Yeah, because I think back to one of my favorite moments in the first season. It's when Sally is doing, I believe it's the Macbeth monologue, and Barry enters just having, thought very intensely about having, killed his friend. That's what's on his mind, and he comes on stage with his one line, and it's devastating.
The queen is dead.
The shift in the show that I've seen in a way seems to mirror very fittingly the process of becoming an actor and some of the various techniques and rehearsal processes that people go through. So in early seasons you have Barry just starting to like tap into who he is and understand his own thoughts. and change the way he approaches things around him. And that's what the show also feels like. It's kind of dipping its toe into this world. But then by the end of the third season, you have entire scenes that play out like Meisner exercises, where Janice Moss's father sits down in front of Jean and they just repeat dialogue to each other back and forth and back and forth. And it's one of the most intense and riveting scenes I think I've seen, and it's straight out of a Meisner exercise. And this season seems to go basically method, but not in the way that we talk about like method in on like social media shorthand, like pretending to be the character. It's about intense emotional recall. The approach to Barry's psychology is almost exactly what it would have been if this was a show about just a regular guy having taken acting classes. At this point in his training, he'd probably be sitting in a corner thinking back to like some of his
Mhm.
darkest and most formative memories, except now that's happening with a spiritual crisis.
Interesting. So you think kind of the show, there's a kind of meta element where it is kind of about the process of acting. I'm not bothered by the changes in the show. I do think it's weird. I saw like a very fractured reaction to the show last season, right? Many
Okay.
people, including myself, were like, "Wow, this is brilliant. This is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen." I think if you wanted to watch Barry to see a comedy, I actually think it's okay that you're disappointed in where the show has gone. Like, it is not very funny
Sure.
anymore. There's a handful of moments that are funny, but like, it is in general very upsetting as a show. And I don't think it's wrong for people to like think they were signing up for one show and then have gotten another and be disappointed in it. So like, if that's you, totally reasonable reaction in my opinion.
I do, however, think that might be like a misreading of the initial seasons as well.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
though, there were more jokes, this was still like from episode one about a guy who has basically lost the will to do anything except kill people,
Mhm.
and finds acting as an outlet for self therapy for the fact that he is basically a mass murderer. There are funny elements to it, but I think it starts out in a very, spiritually dark place. And what we're seeing now is not a sudden, spiritual crisis. It is the natural evolution of that same crisis. But I do understand that if people were going in with the intention of laughing at something lighthearted, I don't think the show was that from the beginning.
Mhm.
But there's definitely a lot fewer laughs and a lot more like I said, misery now. But
Existential
yeah,
questions about life and the nature of humankind. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.